The Arcadion M1 through 4 Savage is currently being touted as the easiest Savage tier to date, with very light DPS checks, easy mechanics, and overtuned classes all contributing to the most clears we've seen out of the Savage tier. What I've told you has really only come from the mouths of people who have cleared every single ultimate multiple times on different jobs. They played this game for over a decade and they largely do this kind of stuff as their job. They're about as hardcore as players can get in this game, and I just wanted to put my own opinions out there as a casual / mid-core raider, as someone who did this tier as their first Savage tier. I think that, this kind of experience isn't really being talked about, so I just wanted to put that out there. I also want to state, just before I really get into it, I'm not here to start fights. I just want to continue this conversation from a different point of view. Everyone has their own opinions and they're entitled to their own. These are mine. If you don't know who I am, my name is Classics, and today I'm going to tell you about my experience and opinions of Final Fantasy XIV's latest Savage tier, Arcadion 1 through 4. I started playing Final Fantasy in the death throes of Endwalker, so I've never been able to play a Savage tier on patch. And Arcadion 1 through 4 was my first foray into the harder difficulties that this game has to offer. I cleared the entire tier on my favorite class, Scholar, and when I mean cleared, I mean only just recently on September 29th, roughly about 10 weeks after the tier was released. So for reference, I also started progging on day 1, and it took me many days, many hours, and many lockouts to finally see Wicked Thunderfall, and I didn't even do that well. Suffice it to say, I'm not excellent at this game. I think the proper term for the kind of player I am is mid-core. That definition seems to change every time, so I honestly don't even know anymore. Anyways, what I can say is that despite struggling for over 2 months on this tier, I did really enjoy it. Might seem weird, but my biggest gripe with the tier wasn't actually the fights themselves, but with the perception around them. The fights released during the discussion of if Dawn Trail was too hard, and I think that it caused a lot of people to take a binary side when the dust finally settled on the raids. So what was the main consensus? Well, we've already said that this tier was easy. There's easy DPS checks, the bosses have low HP, the mechanics are easy, fucking Pictomancer. Like I said before, this was being said from people that had cleared multiple ultimates multiple times. As a first-time Savage Raider, nothing really was more discouraging than struggling to get through a fight for days on end, only to consistently hear that they were easy, and possibly the easiest that they had ever been. What am I supposed to take away from that if I'm doing the mechanics correctly and I'm still seeing enrage? Naturally, us gamers and people as a whole resort to deflecting the blame to others, so initially I grew very upset with the DPS I was being paired with. Yes, overall this is a skill issue, and I'm not asking to be babied to feel better about my play, but to consistently hear that this shit is easy from people who have done this millions of times felt a bit soul draining. I'm not saying that this tier was the hardest tier ever released. Again, I have no frame of reference for previous tiers. This tier, by the numbers, did look to be the easiest Savage has ever been. In my opinion, this tier was actually the perfect difficulty that it needed to be. I saw so many new people trying Savage for the first time, and a slightly easier difficulty made it much more approachable than other tiers, and probably got a ton of people into raiding, myself included. Not on Dynamis though. Combine the difficulty with the story and the characters, and you have a recipe for people to really want to try these fights. I also think that the change in fight design aided in people actually wanting to do more content. That's what pushed me into it, at least. For the people saying this tier was easy, yes, it probably was. I just think that this tier was made as a bridge from all the people hooked from Endwalker and Dawn Trail into the higher gameplay of the scene. Okay, let's talk about the fights themselves. I enjoyed the mechanics presented, especially the theme of remembering what the attack the boss had stored. I know that this is a thing that other Savages do as well, but I found it pretty enjoyable as my first tier. So we're going to start with the first fight, Black Cat. I think this fight is actually a perfect introduction to Savage. I think the mechanics require all players to know their roles and focus on positioning. The changing arena, different spreads, and save mechanics keep you on your toes enough, and the need for party-wide mitigation, at least in early weeks, was very needed, and it made it special to actually live a bloody scratch. I do like quadruple crossing because you can kind of easily tell who fucked it up. The main part of this fight I don't enjoy is how rating counts was so far into the fight and how no one ever really figured out how to do Pouncer. Otherwise, it's a good fight. I like it. I think out of all the fights, I liked Honeybee the least. The first beat and alarm pheromones were really not fun in a PF setting, and the fact that she gets a buff made some pulls unrecoverable if someone messed up. That's just something that wasn't in the other fights or any other fights to my knowledge. I get what they were going for with the idea that you might not die if you mess up a mechanic, but more often than not, you took the deaths, the raised damage down, healed the boss, and gave her a damage buff, all from one mistake. My team really messed up the first quadruple crossing in Black Cat. We were able to recover and continue to fight with only the damage down, and that just wasn't the case with Honeybee. Alarm Pheromones was also just not fun to do ever. Mario Kart seems to be the best way here, but it's always annoying to dodge the baits you can't see and have no time to react to. Every time this mechanic happens, I feel like we're little bugs under a rock that you just picked up, and we're all just like kind of scurrying around and not knowing what the hell else to do. Brute Bomber would be my third favorite fight out of this. The need to look around the arena and process that information quickly was actually quite fun. Fuse Field is also a fun mechanic as a healer, same with Brutal Impact. I also really enjoyed when the 2-minute windows happened, as I also had to juggle mitigation along with my burst windows, at least as a scholar. What I didn't find enjoyable about this fight, however, is that unlike the other fights, the arena doesn't change at all, and it made it difficult for me to know the order of the cleaves, the dives, the impact, and the tank busters. After a while, farther into the fight, it just becomes a little bit like mud to me. I also like the tank busters too, because someone mentioned that during the tank buster, the two tanks are viciously making out, and I can't not think about it every time as they're punched multiple times in a row. Still a good fight, better than other third fights from what I hear at least. M4 is definitely my favorite out of all the fights. The amount of variation in the mechanics is fun every single pull, and it keeps it from being too monotonous. The 2-minute windows during good times also help with that. Mitigation cooldowns are almost perfect, and it's fun to route through the entire fight and second phase. Definitely is a difficult fight to learn, and it's the one that took me the most time to prog, but I never felt like it was impossible like I thought it would be coming into this tier. I never really expected to clear the whole tier. I just kind of did it. All in all, this tier was very satisfyingly difficult as a first-time raider. Nothing ever felt impossible, as frustrating as mechanics were. Don't even get me started on how long it takes to form a party. I would spend more time waiting in party finder groups than I did actually doing the fights, especially if someone left after the first few pulls. Anyways, I just wanted to put a different point of view out there in case people wanted to hear it. Let me know if any of you guys felt the same. I do want to make more videos just chatting on things I want to chat about, so stick around for any nerdy tangents and the like. I go live from time to time, so follow me on Twitch as well. All right, bye-bye.